I did not expect anything unusual when I first examined the chain bridge spanning the Dnieper River in Kiev, officially completed in 1853. The city records were clear: a suspension bridge designed by British engineer Charles Vignoles, built to connect the old city to the industrial districts across the river. What caught my attention was an 1855 construction photograph stored in the Ukrainian State Archive. It showed the eastern abutment mid-completion, revealing a series of decorative arches carved into the stone foundation that bore no load whatsoever. The arches were too deep, too precisely curved, and positioned where no structural logic required them. A renovation note from 1912 mentions ceiling of lower arch chambers, function undetermined. On an 18th century atlas nearby, and the region appeared within territories labelled Tartaria. Some researchers would later describe features like these as remnants of Tartarian infrastructure. At first, I assumed coincidence. I kept looking anyway. The official narrative places the Kiev chain bridge squarely within 19th century engineering achievement. Construction began in 1848, funded by the Imperial Russian government, and the bridge was celebrated as a triumph of modern suspension technology, linking the ancient Pechersk district to the growing industrial zones. Period newspapers praised its unprecedented span and elegant simplicity. In the archive, I examined original blueprints dated 1847. The drawings clearly showed the suspension system: iron chains, stone towers, timber deck, but they ended abruptly at the abutment foundations. And there was no documentation for the elaborate arch system visible in the construction photographs. A construction photograph from 1852 contradicted the drawings. The stone abutments revealed multiple arched recesses carved into their lower portions, arches that supported nothing, connected to nothing, and served no visible structural purpose. The stonework was older in appearance than the bridge above, smoother, more precisely cut, with joint tolerances that exceeded period masonry capabilities. Some alternative architectural historians classify such non-functional arches as Tartarian acoustic or resonance chambers, repurposed during the industrial era as decorative elements. Mainstream explanations dismiss them as aesthetic choices. Aesthetic choices, however, do not require the 2.7-meter depth I measured in the photographs, a depth that suggested interior chambers rather than surface decoration. The sealed chambers appeared in only one photograph. Behind the visible arches, darker recesses suggested passages leading into the abutment's interior. The arch frames were too precisely cut for decorative stonework, each curve matching the next to within millimeters, each voussoir stone identical in dimension. A renovation permit from 1912 mentions closure of internal passages within eastern foundation, access discontinued per municipal directive. No reason was given. The arch proportions troubled me. Each opening measured 1.8 meters wide by 2.4 meters tall, dimensions suited for human passage, not decoration. The curvature followed a precise catenary curve, the mathematically optimal shape for distributing forces, yet these arches bore no weight. Why engineer perfection into a feature that served no structural function? I measured the visible stonework using photogrammetric analysis. The blocks were cut with corner angles precise to less than half a degree. This level of accuracy typically requires modern machining, or methods we no longer understand. The arches led somewhere. The archive did not say where. Before continuing, I examined the broader cartographic context. Between 1700 and 1775, European atlases consistently labelled vast regions of eastern Eurasia as Tartaria, or Great Tartary. The 1706 Guillaume de Lisle map shows this territory extending from Poland to the Pacific. Kiev itself appears on some early maps at the western edge of Tartarian territories. Our mainstream historians describe this as a cartographic convention, not evidence of a unified civilization. Alternative researchers argue otherwise, that the Tartarian label reflects a lost infrastructure culture whose architectural signatures remain visible in bridges, towers, and public buildings across the former Tartarian territories. I did not know which interpretation was correct, but the architectural anomalies I was documenting, non-structural arches with sealed interior chambers, were appearing in bridges throughout regions once labeled Tartaria. An 1867 Russian engineering journal noted, "Many older bridge foundations display arch systems of uncertain purpose predating documented construction." The phrase echoed what I had seen in the photograph. Uncertain purpose. The official narrative claimed the arches were decorative. The physical evidence suggested they were functional, part of a system the 1840s builders did not create but inherited. I expanded my research to other bridges across the former Russian Empire. The Nikolaevsky Bridge in St. Petersburg, completed in 1850, revealed similar anomalies. Construction photographs from 1849 show workers excavating the Vasilyevsky Island abutment, uncovering arched chambers in the foundation that predated the documented bridge by unknown decades, perhaps centuries. The chambers displayed the same precise stonework, the same non-structural arch proportions, the same sealed passages leading into darkness. An engineer's note from that year reads, "Foundation incorporates existing subterranean arched system, origin unknown, adapted to current design." Adapted, not constructed, adapted. The 1850 builders did not create these chambers, they built upon them. The arches in the St. Petersburg foundation matched those in the Kiev abutments, identical 1.8-meter widths, identical catenary curves, identical stonework precision. Two bridges separated by 3 years of supposed construction and over 1,000 kilometers of distance, sharing identical subterranean architecture. Either Russian engineers maintained a secret tradition of building non-functional underground arches, or both bridges inherited their foundations from something older, something the official records do not acknowledge. The deeper I looked, the more I found non-structural arches in unexpected places. The Karlov Most in Prague, officially completed in 1402, displays elaborate arch systems along its tower bases, arches that support nothing, connect to nothing, and serve no visible defensive or structural purpose. And a 1905 restoration photograph shows workers uncovering sealed chambers behind these arches, chambers with smooth stone walls and geometric precision inconsistent with medieval construction. A restoration report from 1906 describes the chambers as of extraordinary workmanship, purpose undetermined. The stonework was too precise for 15th century tools. The arch proportions, 1.8 meters by 2.4 meters, matched the Kiev and St. Petersburg measurements exactly. The same dimensions appearing in bridges separated by 450 years of supposed construction and thousands of kilometers. Some Tartarian researchers identify such consistency as evidence of a unified infrastructure standard, architectural DNA from a civilization that predated the recorded builders. Official histories attribute the similarity to stylistic influence. Style, however, does not explain identical chamber dimensions across centuries and borders. I spent several evenings studying old maps, those that label vast regions as Tartaria, looking for correlation. The 1706 Guillaume de Lille map shows a continuous territory marked Grande Tartarie, stretching across Eurasia. The 1771 Encyclopaedia Britannica describes Tartary as the greatest empire on the face of the earth. Yet, by the mid-19th century, this designation had vanished from European cartography entirely. What remained were the structures, bridges, towers, domes, scattered across territories once unified under the Tartarian name. Comparing the non-structural arch patterns visible in bridge foundations with the regions labeled Tartaria on these old maps revealed unsettling parallels. The identical proportions appeared in Kiev, St. Petersburg, Prague, Budapest, and cities further east into Central Asia. The distribution matched the former Tartarian territories almost exactly. Alternative researchers call this Tartarian architectural DNA. I was beginning to understand why. The pattern was becoming impossible to dismiss as coincidence. I began comparing bridge arches systematically across Europe. In Vienna, the Reichsbrücke, originally completed in 1876, incorporated non-structural arches into its stone piers. Construction photographs show these arches already present when the iron superstructure was installed, carved into foundations that predated the documented bridge. In Warsaw, the Kierbedge Bridge of 1864 sits atop abutments containing sealed arch chambers that engineers described as of pre-existing origin, integrated into modern design. In Budapest, in Dresden, in cities across the former Habsburg, Russian and Ottoman empires, the same pattern repeated. Bridges with non-structural arches, chambers behind the arches, precision exceeding documented period capabilities. All these cities appear on 18th century maps within territories labelled Tartaria, or adjacent to Tartarian regions. The architectural signatures, catenary curves, identical proportions, sealed interior passages, repeated across national boundaries, across supposed construction eras, across official narratives that claimed no connection existed. The most troubling discovery emerged when I examined what lay behind the arches. A 1923 renovation of the Kiev Bridge required structural assessment of the eastern abutment. Engineers drilled into the sealed arch chambers and discovered conduits, glazed ceramic pipes extending deep into the riverbank, connecting the bridge foundation to chambers beneath nearby buildings. The conduits measured 60 centimeters in diameter, far larger than any water system of the supposed construction period required. A renovation report from that year notes, conduit system of unknown purpose discovered within arch chambers. Ceramic lining indicates hydraulic function. System predates documented bridge construction, sealed per municipal directive. Sealed, not studied, not preserved, sealed. The arches were not decorative. They were access points to a buried infrastructure network that connected the bridge to something larger. Some Tartarian researchers argue these conduits formed part of a continental hydraulic system predating the industrial era. The official history records only the bridge above. What lies beneath remains undocumented. Renovation permits from 1900 to 1940 repeat the same phrases across Eastern European cities, arch chambers sealed per directive. Conduit systems filled with concrete. Subterranean passages discontinued. No diagrams survive, no photographs document what was removed. The erasure was systematic, not a conspiracy, but a bureaucratic reflex. Engineers encountered systems they could not explain, and the simplest solution was removal. A 1925 Soviet engineering report describes the discovery of extensive conduit networks beneath multiple bridge sites of pre-revolutionary origin and uncertain purpose. The conduits connected structures across city centres, forming what appeared to be unified systems. The report recommended sealing all access points to prevent structural instability. By 1935, every documented entrance had been filled with concrete. The systems, whatever their purpose, were erased from accessible history. Only the non-structural arches remain visible, markers of something larger that once existed beneath. By now I had identified a repeating pattern across dozens of bridges, non-structural arches, sealed chambers behind them, conduit systems connecting to unknown destinations. The pattern appeared in Kiev, St. Petersburg, Prague, Budapest, Vienna, Warsaw, and cities across the former Tartarian territories. All shared the same architectural DNA, identical arch proportions, catenary curves, chamber dimensions, conduit diameters. Alternative researchers call this the Tartarian bridge signature. evidence of a unified infrastructure network built by a civilization that mainstream history does not acknowledge, then buried and built upon during the 18th and 19th centuries. I cannot prove this theory, but I can document the pattern. Arches older than their supposed construction dates, precision beyond period capabilities, systematic erasure of whatever lay behind them. The bridges stand in plain sight. The arches that served no structural purpose may have served another purpose entirely, one the official record chose not to preserve. The most troubling observation was the consistency across supposed eras. Bridges constructed in 1402, 1850, 1864 and 1876 all displayed the same non-structural arches, the same chamber dimensions, the same evidence of earlier systems sealed during renovation. Either builders across multiple centuries shared a hidden engineering tradition that no document records, or they built upon something older, something already in place when they arrived. Some Tartarian researchers suggest these arch chambers served as nodes in a pre-industrial communication or energy network, resonance chambers connected by hydraulic conduits, functioning through methods we no longer understand. The official histories record only the bridges above, suspension bridges, stone bridges, iron bridges. The chambers below, the arches, the conduits, the sealed passages remain undocumented, unexplained, and largely inaccessible. The truth may lie somewhere between official history and alternative theory, or beneath both. I returned to the Kiev bridge site one final time. The original chain bridge was destroyed during World War II and replaced with a modern structure. But the eastern abutment foundation, the one containing the sealed arch chambers, still exists beneath the current bridge. A maintenance worker told me that engineers occasionally encounter old stonework during repairs, arches that lead to sealed passages no blueprint acknowledges. "We don't investigate," he said. "We just work around them." The photograph from 1852 remains in the archive, arches leading somewhere the records do not acknowledge, chambers sealed and forgotten for over a century. Whatever purpose those arches served, whatever system they connected to, whatever civilization built them, all remain buried beneath the modern city. The Tartarian hypothesis offers one explanation. The official history offers silence. Neither fully accounts for what the photographs show. The investigation ends not with certainty, but with quiet reflection. In the archives, a final photograph lingers, the 1852 image of the non-structural arches, their stonework impossibly precise, their chambers leading into darkness. The official record says the bridge was constructed in 1853. The photograph shows something older beneath it. The renovation logs describe sealing, filling, closing access. What was removed was never documented. What remains is buried. Across Kiev, across Eastern Europe, across regions once labeled Tartaria. The same pattern repeats: bridges with arches that serve no structural purpose, chambers sealed behind them, conduits connecting to unknown destinations. The evidence does not prove a lost civilization existed, but it documents something the official histories cannot explain, a layer beneath the visible structures built with precision beyond documented capabilities, systematically erased during modernization. The arches in the photograph remain visible. Whatever truth they concealed has been buried for over a century. Unlike much of what researchers call Tartarian infrastructure, they linger as traces rather than conclusions, impossible to ignore, impossible to fully explain. I return to the 1852 photograph one final time. The arch is empty, dark, its purpose undocumented. The stonework framing it remains perfectly aligned, too perfect for the era, too precise for the tools. The bridge above was constructed in 1853. The chambers beneath were sealed in 1912. In the century since, no one has recorded what lies beyond. The official history describes a suspension bridge. The photograph shows something older, something connected to other bridges across a continent, something built before the suspension chains were ever installed. And somewhere beneath Kiev, beneath the modern city, beneath layers of concrete and forgetting, the chambers wait, still sealed, still unexplained, still holding whatever truth the 19th century chose not to record.